Joey Logano is a legitimate NASCAR Cup Series champion. And the fact that I even have to say that 2 days after the championship race is frankly a little ridiculous. How's it going, you guys? My name is Eric and welcome to Out of the Groove. And like I just said, we're talking a little bit more about Homestead. We're talking about the fallout from Homestead, the loud opinions on either side, people that are happy for Logano, excited that he won the race at Homestead, won his first ever championship. And then you get the other NASCAR fans, typically the pretty negative NASCAR fans who are upset that, they don't think Logano deserved it. They're upset with the playoff format because it didn't let Kyle Busch, who had the most points all season long, win the championship. They don't think Logano's a legit champion. We're talking about that today. I know it's gonna be fun. I got a strong opinion. This is gonna be great. I've already recorded some stuff that I cut out because I didn't like the way I said it. So we're really, I've been talking here for like an hour, really just stitching this thing together. But oh my goodness, the amount of salt, the amount of bitterness I've seen around the NASCAR fan base the last couple days has been nothing short of huge, for lack of a better word. There's just been so many people that are grumpy about Logano winning the championship, whether it's because it's Joey Logano, I don't know, whether it's because they don't like the playoff format sometimes, it's a bit of all these different factors. But I'm just here to say that Joey Logano is a legit champion, and anyone who's sitting here trying to say that he's not, they're just bitter, and I'm gonna tell you why. NASCAR's had this current playoff format for technically only for 2 years now, but they've had a version of it for about 5 years, with the knockout rounds and everything. The last 2 years, though, they've added in stage points and giving bonus points for wins, which carry throughout the rounds of the playoffs, and since then, I think we've got a pretty legit championship format. I mean, you look at the 4 drivers that made it to Homestead this year, I think almost everyone would agree those were the 4 best drivers throughout the 36 race season. But ever since NASCAR created the playoffs, the chase in 2004, they've put an emphasis on the final 10 races of the season. Much like other sports have their postseason, which, a lot of teams put a lot of emphasis on, and it's the big focus all year is making the playoffs and doing well in the playoffs. NASCAR kind of did the same thing in 2004 when they made it all about the final 10 race stretch. So since that's been that way for 15 years now, pretty long while, let's look at, Joey Logano. I showed you guys this, after the race on Sunday. Joey Logano's stats, in the last 10 races were pretty darn good. He tied with Kyle Busch and Chase Elliott for the most wins during the last 10 races. He had more top 5s than anyone else in the Cup Series, a best average finish, and he was second in laps led only to Harvick. You look at his other Final 4 competitors, Kyle Busch had 2 wins in the final 10 races, not bad. Kevin Harvick only had 1, and it was ruled illegal. And then Martin Truex didn't win any races. Logano had 2 wins in the last 10 races, had the best average finish, second most laps led, most top 5s. You look at these stats, he was clearly the best driver overall in the final 10 races. NASCAR's basically said for the last 15 years, the final 10 races matter most. Joey Logano was the best. That's why he's a deserving champion. That's why he's legitimate. And anyone who continues to sit here and act like Joey Logano is not a legit champion is either living in the past or is just extremely bitter. There's really no other way to put it. NASCAR has been saying now for 15 years, it's a long time when you think about it, 15 years, they've been saying that the last 10 races are the focus. If you don't think Joey Logano's championship is legitimate, then you must not think any of the championships from the last 15 years are legit. You must not think Jimmy Johnson has any championships. By that logic, so stop living in 2003 and before. Look at the now. Look at how NASCAR's been grading their playoffs, how they've been judging their champions for 15 years now. Joey Logano is legitimate. That is indisputable. Now, I know that might rub some people the wrong way, Kyle Busch fans, but I'm just telling you guys the truth. At the end of this race at Homestead, the final race, that final restart, you had the top 4, the championship 4, Logano, Harvick, Busch, and Truex, all there in the top 4, first 2 rows on that restart on equal tires at a fairly evenly matched, a fair track at Homestead, and Joey Logano whooped you all. So now we've made that clear, let's talk a little bit about this playoff format, because I know a lot of people want to debate whether it should stay, whether it should go, whether NASCAR should change it again, and, et cetera, et cetera. Here's my stance. I like the current playoff format. I think, maybe a couple small changes, most notably, the win and you're in for the regular season should be nixed immediately. The fact that Austin Dillon won the Daytona 500 in February and was locked into the playoffs before anybody else doesn't make any freaking sense to me. They should just take the top 16 in, points, just normal points, and have them fight it out for the last 10 races. Win and you're in should be dead. But other than that, I like how stage points and win bonus points carry over round to round. That basically helps. It's like home field advantage in other sports. You know how if you're the top seed in baseball or basketball, you get home field throughout the playoffs? If you're the top seed or if you win a lot of stages or races during the regular season, you get kind of that home field advantage during the playoffs. You get a bunch of extra bonus points every round. That's why even though the big 3 of Truex, Harvick, and Kyle Busch really didn't run that well, they all ran into issues during these playoffs. they still were able to make it to Homestead without too many issues because they had so many bonus points from a dominant regular season. So as far as getting to the Final Four, this playoff format this year worked perfectly. I mean, I don't think anyone could argue that the 4 guys at Homestead weren't the 4 best drivers all season long. I mean, you had the big 3, and then you had Logano, who finished the year with the 3rd best average finish across all 36 races. So yeah, he was pretty good too. My argument is that NASCAR should leave this playoff format mostly alone for basically the next 10 to 20 years, at least. And here's my reason for that. You know, the last 15 years, NASCAR has changed the playoff formats pretty considerably, at least 4 or 5 different times. It feels like every couple of years there's a huge overhaul in the playoff system. And that's kind of caused fans to have to keep up with, you know, what's the rules this year? Okay, how is it happening this year? Like, what's happening now? Like, there's changes so often. And I think this has caused NASCAR fans to look at NASCAR as kind of like a fluid sanctioning body, something that's willing to change on a whim. I think a lot of NASCAR fans believe that if they complain loud enough and often enough, that NASCAR will eventually change the sport or change the playoff system again. Because they've done it so often the last 15 years, I mean, what's stopping them from doing it one more time? I think that's what a lot of these fans are thinking. And because of this, I think it encourages a lot of, you know, outwardly critical fans to complain even more and even louder than usual. And that's not what NASCAR needs. It's all about optics. And when fans look at NASCAR and see their own fan base upset with NASCAR all the time, you know, it's not going to make the sport look good. And NASCAR's brought that on themselves by changing the playoffs so much. I wish they hadn't done that for the last 15 years. I wish they'd settled on one and stuck with it for a while, but can't go back and change history now. But going forward, they can make a change, and that change should be making almost no changes to the format. I think if NASCAR fans can just kind of get used to this format for another 5 years, and especially for another 10 or 15 years, by then, fans really probably won't be complaining about the format much at all. You'll still have a couple old fans going, "Oh, back in my day, wins didn't mean jacks." But those fans will be pretty few and far in between at that point. I think NASCAR fans just need time to get used to it. You know, I hate to make the comparison to stick and ball sports, and a lot of NASCAR fans don't like it when you do that, but I'm gonna do it because it works perfectly here. Back, I don't remember when, about 10 years ago, the New England Patriots NFL team went 16-0 in the regular season. Then they marched through the first couple rounds of the playoffs, got to the Super Bowl, and then lost. They were not the champions that year after a near perfect season. And correct me if I'm wrong, but there was not any sort of public outcry from NFL fans about how unfair the playoff format was. And I think part of that is because, you know, NFL fans have just grown up with this format as kind of the law of the land. It's been in place. The NFL's had basically the same type of playoff system for decades now, more or less. And fans have just gotten used to it. And I think eventually NASCAR fans will get used to this as well. You know, I'll bet, you know, 100 years ago when baseball introduced the playoffs or whatever it was, I'll bet some fans weren't happy about that then either. But here we are 100 years later, and most everyone accepts baseball playoffs as like the greatest thing about baseball. So I know it's hard to compare NASCAR to stick and ball sports, but I think that is at least a sort of fair comparison. I think that if we keep this current format or a similar version of it without any major changes for a longer period of time, fans will eventually come around and get used to it, and they'll just accept it. You know, and I get, you know, I get this. I get that just because fans are accepting it doesn't necessarily mean it's the best playoff format. You know, I could make a whole video where I argue all my points in favor of the current playoff system. I've kind of made points throughout the season where I've talked about it a little bit. I'm not gonna put that all in this video. We can still debate what the best playoff format is. That's what I mean. We can still debate that. I'm not saying that the current format is, you know, like 100% the best. I like it the best, but that doesn't necessarily mean it is the best. You know, it's just my opinion. But whatever system NASCAR puts in place, I just want them to stick with it for 20 years. Because after just a little bit of time, fans will accept it, and we won't have to have this debate as to whether the guy who was the best driver in the final 10 races of the season, whether or not he's a legitimate champion. We won't have to have this stupid discussion anymore. Long story short, yeah, at the end of this video, Joey Logano is your 2018 champion. He's my 2018 champion, hashtag my champion. And people who disagree are bitter or have been living in a bunker since 2003 and have not seen the light of day until this week. It's just the way it is, it's my thoughts. I'm not saying anything that isn't true here. But anyway, guys, that's my episode. Hopefully I made some points that you agree with. I bet some of y'all disagree with a lot of them, but let me know down in the comments below what you guys think. You know, I'd be curious to hear, of course. As always, you can follow me on Twitter, you can follow me on Instagram, those links are down below, or you can sponsor the show like our amazing Patreon supporters right here. You too can sponsor the show if you check out that top link down below. Thank you so much for the support. It really helps me out directly, and I can't thank you guys enough. Thank you so much. First official episode of the off season, huh? Yeah, pretty wild. But we got many more coming where this came from. This is kind of a downer episode to start the off season, I suppose, but we got some more fun episodes planned. Later this week, I'm gonna do a video where I grade every driver's season this year, like A, B, C, D, F, you know, who failed, who had a good season. You might see some surprises there. Gonna be fun, gonna be a lot to talk about. Got a lot of episodes like that coming out. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you guys then. Have a good rest of your day, everyone. Have a good week, and see you soon. Peace out, y'all.